Hello Star Wars fans, and welcome to episode 88 of Journey into Legends. Today we'll be reading Dark Journey, as well as other short stories by Elaine Cunningham. Dark Journey was released in 2002 and primarily follows Jaina's solo after the events of Star by Star. We also have 3 short stories by Cunningham, including The Crystal, Red Sky, Blue Flame, and The Apprentice. So without further ado, let's read and review. Alright, so the first short story we have is called The Crystal, and it comes from Star Wars Gamer issue number 5. And this story takes place between young Jedi Knights and the New Jedi Order, and follows Jaina just after her graduation from the Jedi Academy. Basically, as a graduation gift, Han gets her a Z-95 headhunter of her own, and as she's leaving Yavin 4 on her way to vacation on Mon Calamari, she gets attacked by a cyborg pilot who believes her ship has been stolen from him. Overall, this was a fine story. Nothing meaningful really happened. It was cool seeing the Solo kids during this time of peace again, after reading so many books of them getting tortured and traumatized during the war. Other than that, though, this story was nothing too special. The ship Jaina gets in this story doesn't appear in the New Jedi Order series, so I don't know what happens to it. I also found it really weird that Han gave Jaina a ship, and seemingly didn't give Jacen or Anakin anything. And finally, the ending to this story was really abrupt. I had to check and flip through the magazine a few times to actually be sure that I didn't miss anything. Our next story is Red Sky, Blue Flame from Star Wars Gamer issue number 7, and this one follows Jagged Fell soon after the events of Vision of the Future, as a Chiss military academy is attacked by pirates, and Jagged helps in fending them off. This story serves as an explanation for Jagged's scar, as well as the beginning of his rise to power, leading to where we eventually see him in New Jedi Order. Overall, this story was nothing too special. I haven't seen too much of Jagged's character to care much, so this story didn't connect with me as much now as it might later on when I've read more about his character. Anyways, with those 2 short stories out of the way, let's jump into Dark Journey. With this book being the follow-up to Star by Star, a lot of Jaina's arc is her dealing with her grief of not just Anakin's death, but also Jacen's, because at this point everyone thinks he's dead. And as a follow-up to Star by Star, I found this book's handling of Jaina pretty disappointing. Jaina goes through an arc that had a lot of potential, with her adopting a very Kip Duron-esque attitude toward the war, and sort of embracing the dark side a little bit. However, I found the execution of this arc really strange. Jaina's characterization and attitude toward her friends and family is really all over the place, and there are a few moments, like her fight with Tenel Ka, her attitude toward Jag Fell, and her sudden faith in Kip Duron, that felt very out of character and sudden. Other than that, I enjoyed all of the other characters, especially, first, Tenel Ka, whose reluctant acceptance of the Hapan throne was a great moment for her character, and second, Kip Duron, who had a pretty decent arc in this book, realizing the effect his actions have had on the Jedi Order and the galaxy, although I think that could have been explored a little more. After the surviving members of the Mirkor strike team take refuge on Hapes, a lot of this book deals with the issue of Hapan politics, involving Tea Shum, Tananiel Zhou, Princess Solder, and others. There were some aspects I liked about this plotline. Like I said before, I really enjoyed seeing Tenel Ka take the throne, despite not wanting to. I also found the idea of Jaina being manipulated into marrying Princess Solder to make her the Hapan Queen pretty interesting. Of course, the idea is completely despicable and disgusting, and somehow made Tea Shum an even more deplorable character. But I thought it would have been a very interesting direction to take Jaina's character in, and although I'm glad it didn't eventually happen, it was an interesting idea. However, other than those really minor moments, I found the rest of this Hapan plotline extremely boring and out of place. Maybe if this were a standalone novel, I would have enjoyed it more, but this book isn't standalone. It's book 10 of a series, and it's the follow-up to Star by Star, so this all felt very filler to me. One of my favorite details or storylines in this book was Jaina taking on the role of Yun Harla, the Yuzan Vong trickster goddess, or at least pretending to taunt the Vong, specifically Priest Harar, by renaming her stolen Vong ship the Trickster, and copying its gravitic signature to make the Vong fire on their own ships. Overall, I found this plotline really intriguing. This, as well as the Jedi heresy plotline that began with Vua Rapung, with the Vong starting to view the Jedi in almost a spiritual manner, are really interesting, and I hope there's a lot more of it going forward. So overall, I found this book really disappointing. As a follow-up to Star by Star, I think the exploration of Jaina's grief was poorly handled, and her character arc felt very sudden and out of character. And the book spent way too much time on the Hapan politics, and not nearly enough time was dedicated to the characters and their arcs, which sucks because this book was very short and could have benefited from at least another 50 or so pages. Anyways, this was probably my least favorite NJO book so far. Lastly, we have The Apprentice by, of course, Elaine Cunningham, and this comes from Star Wars Gamer number 8, and this short story takes place during the events of Dark Journey. It's actually a chapter that was ripped straight from the middle of the book and released as a supplemental short story. And I don't know why. This story certainly doesn't work on its own, and its omission from Dark Journey made that chapter of the book a bit confusing. Anyways, this story was pretty decent for the most part, except for the ending, which was fantastic. The last few pages have Jaina learn from Kip Duron how to erase a person's memory, which is an interesting force power. This aspect could have been a big part of the novel, and the book would have been significantly more interesting. There's a part at the very end of the story where Jaina erases some of Lobaka's memory, which makes her feel super guilty. That is compelling stuff. I'd much rather read a whole book about that than a book about Hapan marriages and politics. So overall, I enjoyed this story, and although it was originally part of the novel, ironically, I thought it was much better. Alright, next we have Star Wars Tales issue 13, which has 6 stories, all centering on Mace Windu. Starting with Puzzle Piece, in which Mace Windu travels to the planet Erstasia to negotiate peace during a civil war. He soon learns that the war is being fought over a statue of their creator. Mace promptly cuts the statue into 1,000 pieces and leaves the Erstasians to divvy up the pieces among themselves. This was a pretty dumb story, especially the ending. I don't think destroying a culture's religious artifacts is very Jedi-like, but that's just my opinion. Anyways, next we have The Secret of Tet-Ami. This one starts with the people of Karthus as they try to enter an ancient temple on their planet called the Temple of Tet-Ami, which celebrates a warrior from 4,000 years ago that saved their people from beasts. Mace Windu enters the temple to return an orb, and is transported back in time 4,000 years, helps protect the Carthassians from the beasts, then he is transported back to the present, basically creating a time loop. This was a fun little story with a neat twist, but I'm just not a huge fan of time travel and time loop stuff like this in Star Wars. The next story is Survivors, in which Mace Windu hunts down a tyrant named Uda Khalid. This one was nothing too special, it was just Mace Windu on a mission doing some cool Jedi things. I did like the final fight between Mace and Khalid, and the art was pretty good. Our next story is Stones, which is a short little comic about how Mace Windu got his lightsaber crystal. In it, a young Mace Windu travels to the planet Hurricane, and while fighting some strange rock creatures, he jumps across a cavern and the creatures mindlessly jump into the cavern to pursue, and one of them shatters. Mace quickly realizes the damage he's caused, and he uses the Force to repair the creature, who then gifts Mace a crystal from their body. This was actually a really nice story. The art was great, it's cool to see a young Mace Windu, and I found the moment with the rock creature really sweet. Our penultimate story is The Sith in the Shadow, which follows Mace Windu and a Padawan on a planet where the natives worship the Sith. Mace Windu sends the Padawan on a mission into a nearby Sith temple, where he's told to defeat an adversary inside. The Padawan finds a cloaked man inside and attacks him, but soon realizes that it was Mace Windu, who instructs the boy that he's failed the training because of his fear. This was a pretty decent story overall, the art was really good, and the planet with the native Sith worshippers was interesting. Our final story is Children of the Force, which is a really nice look into the Jedi Order's tradition of taking Jedi in as infants. An infiltrator breaks into the Jedi Temple and steals an infant Jedi, and when confronted by Mace Windu, she reveals that she was hired by the child's parents. The story ends with Mace returning the child to his family, and we see that Mace's parents actually sent him a message, which he promptly deletes. This was a pretty interesting story, and it was a nice exploration of a pretty controversial aspect of Jedi tradition. It's also really fun to get a glimpse into Mace Windu's birth family. Anyways, that was Star Wars Tales number 13. This was a pretty good issue. I was surprised to see that the whole thing was about Mace Windu, but I'm not sure I can complain since the quality here was very consistent for once. The only story I wasn't too fond of was the first one, but the rest were good or even great. Anyways, thank you all for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe, and stay tuned for my next video where I'll be starting Aaron Alston's Enemy Lines duology with Book 1, Rebel Dream. See ya.